All right, welcome everybody. So tonight we're going to talk about breaking habits and achieving health goals with NLP and hypnosis. If you have not gone to our website, nlpca.com, I would recommend that you go there. And if nothing else, get on our mailing list and sign up for the free NLP introduction class. You can take it online. It's all on there. We even have an app available through the App Store that you can download. The app is NLPCA. And once you get into that course, there is also a group feed in there, like a group community, like a Facebook group, but within the learning portal. And so you can ask questions, you can interact with other people there, you can even message me directly. So it's a really great way to start to learn NLP without any risk on your part and to get to know us a little bit better and get a feel for how I teach. All right, so let's talk about habit control a little bit. And one of the first things I'm going to start with, if you've seen these before, I appreciate you bearing with us, but it's worth mentioning. In the world of neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis, some people are curious as to why we often teach both together or why I use both in private programs. I've been doing coaching, and my name is Robert Harrison. I'm the training director. I'm also an NLP coach and trainer. I don't just train NLP, which I do a lot of NLP training. The majority of the time I spend working is with individual clients doing individual coaching. I do a ton of private coaching, and I've done that full time since 2002. For 10 years before that, I worked in mental health as a dual diagnosis specialist. So that's people who have mental illness and drug and alcohol addictions. And so that was kind of my specialty before then. I've essentially been doing people puzzles for over 30 years at this point. So this is the number one thing that I do. And I do more private coaching than I do training, but I love both. And just over the years, when you've been doing as long as I have, you eventually start teaching others and training others how to do it. I even mentor coaches now who want to build their NLP and hypnosis coaching practice. And of course, one of the big things that people come to NLP and hypnosis for is habit control. And it's an art form to do this. It is different from person to person. And what I love about doing this kind of work is it's clear and it's measurable. You cannot fake it. You either quit smoking or you don't. You either lose weight or you don't. You either start sleeping again or you don't. And I love to do things that are clear and that are measurable. So my hope tonight is to give you some ideas of what you can do to start to change some of your habits pretty quickly and give you some directions to point yourself in. And if you have additional questions, you can hit me up through the group and ask them, or even maybe jump on one of our office hours, which we do office hours twice a week, Mondays at 2 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 a.m., all Pacific Standard Time. So let's start with, does this stuff really work? I want to show you just a couple of examples. Now, all of these are examples where I used NLP and hypnosis together. Hypnosis gets a person into a more receptive, open state. It also allows us to condition in a new way of responding. It allows us to rehearse a new behavior. It allows us to build up those synaptic connections in their brain. There's been a lot of studies that have done that show that when someone mentally rehearses something as if they're actually there doing it, it starts to build those synaptic connections in the brain, and you will develop that ability. It activates the same parts of the brain that would be activated if you're actually doing it. So when you want to get yourself to do a new behavior, mentally rehearsing it will help you build the same neural pathways. They did that study that many of you have heard of at Harvard with piano players, and they had 3 groups. The first group actually practiced a piano piece. The second group visualized that they were doing it perfectly. The third group did nothing. And the second group that just visualized it developed 85% of the neural pathways that the group that actually practiced did. So we know that when you mentally rehearse a new behavior, you are more likely to do that. And I encourage you to take that into your brains and use it for 2 purposes right now. Number one, after tonight, when you decide what changes you want to make for yourself, start to mentally rehearse the change that you want to make. Also, because if you do that, you are more likely to execute on that new behavior. And then we're going to teach a whole bunch of other things to do along with it. But the more you mentally rehearse it, the more you imagine you're doing it, the more likely you are to do it because you're mentally practicing it. So it creates this response expectancy to do it in the future. The other way to use that information is if you are rehearsing worst case scenarios and things not going your way, that is more likely to happen as well. So start to prune your thinking. Start to be aware of the thoughts that you are entertaining in your mind. You have this magical system in your brain called the reticular activating system. And what it essentially does is what you focus on, your brain will curate and it will tend to collect. So if I make a decision that weight loss is going to be impossible for me and that it's going to be hard and I can never lose the weight, my mind is now focused on noticing all the ways in which that decision is true, that it is going to be hard, that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be impossible. And if I do that, now my brain will start collecting those experiences. When it collects those experiences, it creates what we call an attractor basin in the mind. So now when I think about weight loss, I'm more likely to go to that conclusion, and I'm more likely to notice evidence that that is true. And what's really interesting is if you study NLP, and we've done this in some of the other classes, we do this certainly in the free intro class, you realize there's about 2 million bits of information we can absorb at any 1 second. But out of that, we're lucky if we can focus on about 5 at a time. So the minute you make a new decision, for example, that weight loss is going to be easy for me, you can start to look for all of the evidence that has always been there in your world from the time you're a child to now. And you will find examples, if you are looking for it, of where losing weight or eating healthy or exercising was easy, where it was absolutely easy for you to do. Maybe when you're a kid, you love to run and play. Boom, there's one example. Maybe there was that time where the food didn't taste so good and it was easy to say no. There's another example. And as you start to stack those, what it does is it shifts that reticular activating system in your mind. So now your mind is focused on looking for ways in which it's easy, and it will start to stack those experiences, which are also going to be in your environment. Now realize we're responding to less than 10% of what's available to us. Less than 10% of our experience are we actually processing or taking in. In fact, it's way, way less than 10%. So I'm being very conservative when I say 10%. So if you're noticing the ways in which something's difficult, there's also going to be plenty of examples if you look through your existing experience of the opposite being true as well. And so when we look at the opposite, if I think weight loss is hard, now I'm going to look at how weight loss is easy. I start to stack those examples. There was that one time, maybe it was in my 20s, but there was that one time when I got really fit. Great. There's an example. There was that one time when I made this change and that was pretty easy. Great. There's another example. There was that one time when I really went out and I love to hike and I was really on a hiking jag for a while with my friends. Okay. There's another example. And as you stack those, it shifts that focus in your mind and it gets that reticular activating system to start to curate another set of experiences, which then create an attractor basin, just like the other one that you had. And now you start looking for the opportunities, the coincidences, and the data to support the goals that you have for yourself. And so when you do that, that will create more momentum and less friction, and it will make moving towards what you want a lot easier. So this is going to be a big part of changing habits, but I want to show you just a couple examples of what this stuff can do. This is Cecile. She came into the office and she actually, a lot of people say, hey, when I quit smoking, I'm going to gain weight. Well, she wanted to quit smoking and she wanted to lose a lot of weight. So she quit smoking with me. Then she went and lost 122 pounds right afterwards. Okay. I can show you plenty of examples of where people quit smoking and lose weight, just as many as where people quit smoking and gain weight. And the number one thing that determines what will happen for you is the expectation that you have in your mind about that. If someone comes in to quit smoking and they're convinced they're going to gain 5 pounds, and I don't unconvince them of that, they will gain 5 pounds every single time. But if someone comes into the office and they're convinced they will lose 5 pounds when they quit smoking, because maybe they know they're going to exercise more or something like that, that's what happened for me, then they will lose 5 pounds. And I often leave that one alone, unless they're really, really thin, right? There's no problem. So we just leave that alone. And then they lose 5 pounds. So your results will almost always match your expectations. that you have for yourself. Okay. This is just another example. I won't go through these too much, but Bob, he was diabetic. He also quit smoking and then he lost a bunch of weight. Again, quit smoking, lost 36 pounds. He was on diabetes medications. He's able to lower them substantially. Okay. This is a guy that had rheumatoid arthritis. He had a chronic medical condition that put him in a lot of pain and a lot of inflammation, and it made it very hard for him to exercise. On top of that, he had a newborn, and he still lost 69 pounds and kept it off for many years. Okay. This was the mayor of Belmont at the time. Came in and lost quite a substantial amount of weight. Here is Sabrina. She was referred by her mom. Her mom came in and lost over 50 pounds. Then Sabrina lost 83 pounds, kept it off for several years. Lonnie came in. He was smoking almost 2 packs a day for about 30 years. And he came in and quit smoking. Now that says 8 years. He's been smoke-free at this point, probably because that was at least 15 years ago. So probably close to 20 years at this point or more that he's been smoke-free with me. Okay. And here's some other examples. There's just a golf kid was ranked 27th in California, and he had some bad mental habits that was really affecting his golf score, ways in which he would talk to himself and the ways in which he would think. So if he had one bad swing, that would lead to 4 or 5 bad swings. And so we were able to redirect that. And he actually, went from 27th to California to, I think he beat the #1 ranked kid in the country. Yeah. At a shootout in Hawaii. I think that brought him up to 7th in California. And then he became a pro golfer. Okay. And we got some other examples here. I'll skip these other ones. But just to give you an example, I have a lot of other results, and we've had multiple people lose well over 100 pounds in our NLP and hypnosis clinic over the years. Okay. So this stuff definitely works. Now, here's something to think about. I mentioned this in one of the other classes, so I'm not going to go too into detail about it here. But when we're talking about habits, I want you to remember, folks, the #1 biological goal of your nervous system. Okay? Who knows, who has not heard this before has an idea of what it might be? If you do, go ahead and raise your hand or unmute and speak up or put it in the chat. What do you think is the #1 biological goal of your nervous system? Does anyone know? Anyone want to take a shot at it? Okay. Anyone? Survival. That's right, Anas. So it's our #1 goal is to survive long enough to keep life going. Like that's what we're biologically wired to do. So when you're trying to understand all of our weird, wonky behavior that we do, why do we want to be powerful? Why do we want to be attractive? Why do we want to be liked? Why do we want to be successful? All of this stuff can be reduced down to this biological need inside to stay viable and stay alive long enough to keep life going. And oddly, it doesn't leave you once you do that. I technically, having 2 boys, 13 and 16, have fulfilled my biological purpose. I forwarded life, and multiplied myself in a sense. I've got 2 kids and I still have that biological drive. I want to be successful. I want to be healthy. I want to be popular. I want to be all these things. This drive is never going to leave our nervous system. This is why we are attracted to other people. This is why we have a desire to procreate. That's why that stuff feels good, is that's our #1 biological drive. So it is to stay alive long enough to reproduce and keep life going. And so because of that, we have 3 very predictable biological drives. These work like currents in your nervous system. And so if you can take this knowledge and interface this with NLP, what we know about NLP and hypnosis, how we are going to work on habits will start to make sense. The 3 biological drives, #1, are to avoid pain. We avoid anything that we perceive as painful, a sharp tooth, a pointy object, intense pressure. And what's interesting is it's not just physical pain, it's also emotional pain. And so that is part of what is wired in our nervous system to help us survive. If an animal comes at me with sharp teeth and tries to kill me, I want to avoid it. I want to get away from it as quickly as possible so that I can stay alive long enough to live another day. So we're always going to be a program to avoid what is painful or what we perceive as painful, whether it's physical or emotional. The second biological drive that's always going to be there and it's never going to go away is our desire to seek pleasure. We are wired to pursue the things that feel good. And the reason for that is because in a natural environment, folks, if you go back to that Paleolithic era that our nervous systems and our brains were designed for to survive in, the only two natural things that brought pleasure in a natural environment is food and sex. The two things we had to risk our life to get and to maintain: food and sex. Okay, those are things that bring us an intense, what we call dopamine cascade. And so we are always going to be wired to seek pleasure. Now, again, in this modern environment, this is incredibly problematic because fast food is on every corner and we don't have to risk life and limb to get it. And there's lots of things that we can do now that bring us feelings of pleasure. And so it's really easy for that to spiral out of control and do things like overeat or overconsume or become addicted to certain things that make us feel good. And the third biological drive is the need to conserve energy. And this often looks like taking the easy way out. And that really is kind of what it is. It's taking the easy way out. Now, taking the easy way out, some people interpret that as being lazy, but you got to realize lazy behavior, folks, is highly intelligent survival mentality. That's what it is. Because in a Paleolithic environment, yeah, so if you feel lazy, celebrate. You are a success. Because, back in the day when we're in a cave and we're starving and the food is out there and we got to get past the saber-toothed tiger to get it, we had to calculate and go, is the risk worth the potential reward? Is the effort I'm going to have to put forth to try and get that food worth the energy I'm going to expend to try and go after doing it? And so we have to make this calculation to decide if something is worth our energy. This is why, folks, when you have goals that you are not congruent with, it's very hard to motivate yourself. For those of you who have the belief in your brain that weight loss is going to be next to impossible, that is why it is hard to motivate yourself to eat better and go to the gym. Because your nervous system goes, hey, it's not going to work out anyway. Why put ourselves through torture and pain when we don't need to? Let's just avoid that. Let's bypass that because it's not going to work out anyway. That's no different than saying, look, I don't think I'm going to get past the saber-toothed tiger, so I'm just going to stay in a cave and sleep and maybe try again tomorrow. Does this make sense so far? Is this kind of clicking for people? So realize these three biological drives are always going to be in you. They're always going to be in you. They're always going to be working. So if something's painful, you want to avoid it. If something's pleasurable, you're going to want to seek it. And then you're always going to want to take the easier option that you can get. Always, never going to change. Now, the question is, how do we leverage that? If we know that that's true, how do we leverage that? And that's where NLP can kind of come in and help us out. Okay. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, real quickly, there's 4 chemicals that rule us. We don't need to go too much into this. There's endorphins, which help us ignore pain and keep pushing. There's dopamine, which gives us that intense sense of pleasure. That's going to be the drug we're going to be focused on. It also gives us a feeling of accomplishment, like we're doing something. And so this is the problem with like alcohol and drugs. This is the problem with porn addiction and certain sexual behaviors and things like this, or going out and shopping, because there's lots of unhealthy habits that give us an intense dopamine hit when we do them. And that makes us feel like we're doing something that is going to help us survive. And when we get that dopamine hit, that's your body's way of saying, hey, what you're doing is great. Keep doing it. Keep it up. It's working. Keep going in that direction. So if you go out and run 10 miles, you are going to get a dopamine hit at the end of that. That's your body saying, hey, what you're doing is working. You keep doing this. You're going to survive. Things are going to be great. If you get a bonus check at work, you're going to get a dopamine hit. If you work a long week and it's finally Friday, you're going to get a little bit of a dopamine hit from doing that. So there's lots of healthy things we do that give us a reward: exercise, accomplishing goals, things like that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of unhealthy things like Happy Meals, right? And and soda and beer and wine for some of us, and shopping that gives us a dopamine hit as well in a not so healthy way. So just realize that's really what's driving us a lot of the times. Then there's serotonin, which gives us a sense of self-recognition and social status, well-being. And then oxytocin, that feeling of love, peace, and calm that mothers get when a baby is born. And that helps them bond with the child. But the main drug we want to focus on is this dopamine, this intense pleasure-seeking behavior. Many of us scroll on Instagram, for example. We do the death scroll on Instagram. Why? We get a quick little dopamine hit from doing that. Watching TV, we get a quick little dopamine hit from doing that. So how you set up your environment is going to be really important. Okay? One of the things I'm going to recommend that you do to start to steer your behavior in a different direction is alter your environment. With your phone, I don't know if you can see this all, folks. See all my icons are color here. There's a feature on your phone where you can make it black and white. So now notice my screen is all now black and white. I've set up a hotkey on here, and so my whole phone goes black and white. Now you may ask yourself, what's the point of doing this? Well, guess what? If I leave my phone black and white, I am significantly less likely to look at it. I will death scroll about half as much. If you don't believe me, try it. Switch your screen to black and white, leave it black and white, and you will not have nearly as much fun, aka not nearly as much dopamine by when you go to scroll. So again, I'll do this because I don't know if people could see it too well before. So there's one little hot button I programmed, so it makes my whole phone black and white, just like that. So that's one little simple thing that you can do. You know, I've got 2 boys, and at one point I lived in a household with 3 young boys. And I remember my ex-wife put a basket of, one day I came home and she said, "Oh, guess what? Look what I set up in the kitchen." And she put a basket of snacks out on the counter, like granola bars and snack bars and things like that, protein bars. Most of it was somewhat healthy, but they were still processed bars. And she put it out on the counter. And I said, "Yeah, I don't know about that." She goes, "What's the problem?" I go, "Watch how fast they disappear." Because they were convenient. They're within sight. The boys walked out to the kitchen. They're hungry. They look at the basket. They see it's right there. All they have to do is tear it open, and they instantly get the satisfaction of the food. They don't have to peel anything. They don't have to slice anything. They don't have to cut anything. They don't have to open up anything at all. And that basket disappeared within like 48 hours. She was blown away. So when we refilled it, I said, "Here's what we're going to do. Just watch this." And literally what I did was I put it on the top shelf in the cupboard. We never restricted the boys. We never told them they couldn't have any. We put no limitations on them at all. I just moved them further out of reach and made it a little more inconvenient. And it was also out of sight. And the snacks lasted about 5 times as long. Okay? One little environmental change. They've done a number of studies about this. I mention it in the book I'm finishing up right now, where they did a study where they took a glass bowl and put candies in it and put it in an office. And the proximity of how close the bowl was to people affected how much they ate dramatically. And then whether the bowl was clear where they could see it and it was in their line of sight affected the use, how much they would eat dramatically. And when they made it an opaque bowl that they couldn't see in, the eating went down when they moved the bowl just 5 feet further from the person. So it wasn't within hand's reach while they were working. Their consumption dropped by more than half. It was significant. So for those of you who are looking at breaking habits, one of the things to do is start to adjust your environment so it's a little bit harder to get that habit that you're trying to curb. Just make it a little bit harder. Okay, so like if you're trying to cut down on soda, instead of having it cold in the fridge, have it warm in the garage. So you have to walk outside to get one to have one. Makes it a little bit less convenient, and little adjustments like that will start to alter your behavior pretty dramatically and really quickly. So let's talk about the structure of a habit. There's a very predictable structure of a habit. There's a great book by Charles Duhigg called The Power of Habits. Raise your hand if you've read that book or heard of that book before. Okay. It's a bit of a dry science book, but here's the important lesson in the book. Every habit has three distinct parts to it. There's three distinct parts to any habit. There is the cue. That is what triggers the thought to then execute the habit. It's the cue. So for a smoker, sometimes the cue is they feel stressed. Sometimes the cue, I smoked for 17 and a half years. So Demetrius, I don't know how it is for you, but one of my cues would be every time the phone rang, I'd want to grab a cigarette and go out and smoke a cigarette while talking on the phone. Having a cup of coffee in the morning was another cue to have a cigarette. For some people, it's getting in the car. For some people, it's getting out of the car. For some people, it's getting a break at work. For some people, it's having a glass of wine. There's different cues. So one of the things you can start to do if you have a habit that you want to do less of is start to become aware of the actual cues that trigger you to do it. Now, the next part is the routine. So for example, if we look at something like smoking, the cue might be, I'm having my morning coffee. The routine is I then pull out my cigarette, I light my cigarette and I start smoking my cigarette. Okay. And then the reward is the payoff. It's the dopamine hit. It's the reason why we go through the routine. It's all about that reward. And so for a smoker, oftentimes the reward is this sense of relaxation that happens after they finish the cigarette. Okay. Or if you are overeating, the reward could be the dopamine hit that you get from that quick sugar fix or that quick carb fix that you got. Yeah, so Demetrius said anchoring. And so a lot of times a cue could be like an anchor. And in NLP, when we mention this concept of an anchor, it's like a predictable button that elicits a certain response in a person. So if a baby smiles at you, that's often an anchor for you to soften and make your nervous system go parasympathetic. How many people do that when you see a baby or perhaps a cute puppy or a kitten? Your whole body just goes, ah, and relaxes. Yeah, that's what we call an anchor or a trigger. Okay. So every habit has a cue, a routine, and a reward. So when you're looking at developing a new habit, you want to think about the cue. When do I want to trigger the new habit? What's the routine? And then what's the potential reward going to be from it if we can install a reward? And so that can be read about, or you can learn more about that in the book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the kingpin of a habit, folks. Now I'm going to completely oversimplify the approach to dealing with habits. And this is the underpinning of how I approach all habit work with clients. Now, there's an art to this that we're going to talk about in a little bit more depth. But I want to start with a really basic way to think about habits that I think is really easy for you to understand and start to apply in your life. So kingpin means a main or large bolt in a central position. So essentially a kingpin is that one thing that if you pull it out, the whole thing collapses and falls apart. And that's what we want to do. We want to shift and change the habit as quickly as we possibly can. Okay? So the kingpin of a habit is the belief that there's a benefit, pure and simple. As long as you believe that there's a benefit to the habit that you're doing, whether it's conscious or unconscious, you will keep doing it. And the amount of pull you feel towards it is directly proportional to how much benefit you perceive you're getting from it. If you want to get yourself to stop doing a habit, you need to remove the belief that there's a benefit. Okay, that's the ultimate way to do it. Now, if you believe there's more benefit to not doing it than doing it, that will overpower it for a while. And I'll give you a good example of that. Many women who love to smoke and then become pregnant will quit smoking immediately once they're pregnant. They will quit. They will stop smoking. Now, they still want to smoke. They still desire a cigarette. And the belief that the cigarette benefits them in some way does not go away. But for a period of time, the weight of what it would mean about them, of the consequences, the pain and misery that would come from smoking as a pregnant woman, possibly damaging their kid, outweighs the perceived benefit of smoking. So if you imagine the scales of justice, the minute they become pregnant, the scales tip in that direction. And so it's easy for them to stop. And it literally, like when it tips, it flips the switch in their brain. And so they stop smoking. And then unfortunately, often once they have the baby, whoosh, the switch flips and they start smoking again, or they start drinking again, or doing something like that. So unfortunately, a lot of approaches of dealing with habits take the approach of trying to convince the person of how unhealthy it is, how bad it is for you, why you shouldn't overeat, why you shouldn't smoke too much, why you shouldn't drink too much, why you shouldn't watch too much TV or do too much scrolling. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to shift those scales in the direction that makes it very easy for the person to stop. But the problem is they're leaving the belief that there's a benefit intact. And as long as you do that, guess what? It's only a matter of time before one day you come home from work. Maybe you have a rough day. Maybe you have a great day. Maybe you're on vacation. Maybe something else comes up. Maybe you have a fight with your person you're in a relationship with, and all of a sudden emotional eating sounds like a good idea, and the scales shift back. So one of the best ways, if I'm helping someone quit smoking, or if I'm helping someone get rid of an unwanted habit, is I want to fully convince them. I want to fully deconstruct the belief that there's any benefit to the habit that they're doing. And if I can do that, then it doesn't matter if they have a good day or a bad day. They're simply not going to go back to it. And that is an art. It is definitely an art. I'll give you an example. With smoking, why do you think people like to smoke? What is the perceived benefit of smoking? Go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can tell me. What is the perceived benefit of smoking, especially for you smokers out there? Breathing. Okay, well, you breathe whether you smoke or not, Demetrius, so be more specific. Stress. Yeah. So many people smoke because they believe it relaxes them. There you go. Yeah, reduce stress. They believe it relaxes them. They believe it gives them a break, right? It's, some people say, oh, I smoke because it's social, because my friends do it, right? So when you're working on reducing a habit, what you want to do is list all the perceived benefits that there are to the habit, and then one by one reframe them so they no longer hold true. Okay? Now, in reality, smoking is one of the biggest scams that there ever was. It's one of the biggest scams. And what happens is when someone smokes cigarettes is they have an enmeshment problem. They have an enmeshment problem. What I mean by that is they've taken a couple things and they've put them together. So now they think they can't have one without the other. If you think about smoking, smoking is a 3-part ritual for relaxation. Part 1 is you take a break. You take a break and you walk away from whatever you're doing. Now, we all know, and we've all been told, especially when we were kids and we were upset about something, at some point, probably all of us have had someone say, why don't you walk away? Why don't you take a break and allow yourself to cool down a little bit? Yeah, raise your hand if you've had that experience before. You're upset about something, someone said, just take a break, take a little time, get some distance from it, walk away. We know that when we walk away, that helps our nervous systems calm down, right? Our nervous systems are either going sympathetic, which is where we clench and get stressed and go into fight or flight, or they're going parasympathetic, which is where we let go and relax and calm down. So many of us have had that experience. Step 1, when you smoke, take a break, walk away. And that, if you do that, after a while, your nervous system is going to calm down. The second step to smoking is, and if you think about it, it's the average smoker. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about exercise. The average smoker takes 10 puffs to get to a cigarette. Did you know that, folks? The average smoker takes about 10 puffs to get to a cigarette. And notice when you smoke, someone mentioned this earlier, you breathe deeper than normal. You go, so you have a deep inhale, you have a deep exhale. Now, did you know that 80 to 85% of every puff is oxygen and only 15 to 20% of every puff is actual smoke? So what are you really doing when you smoke a cigarette? You're taking 10 deep rhythmic breaths in a row, just like you would do at the end of a yoga class or at the end of a meditation class. And guess what? Deep breathing is the most ancient healing meditative practice in the world. So is it relaxing? You betcha. It is the number one relaxation technique in the world. That's why I say it's a scam. Part 3 is where you suck poison into your lungs. It's the actual 15 to 20% of smoke that you're sucking into your lungs. Now, if you think the smoke is what relaxes you, I encourage you to think about this. If I put you in a room and I seal off all the windows and vents and I fill the room full of smoke, do you think you're going to relax? No. Your nervous system is going to freak out and you are going to panic and you are eventually going to cough, gag, puke, or pass out or go into cardiac arrest. There is nothing about inhaling smoke that is relaxing to the human nervous system at all. If every time you took a puff, you could inhale 85 to 90% smoke, you would instantly be on the floor having medical issues and conditions. And so what I do in a smoking program is I de-enmesh. I take these two parts, the part of them that believes. So see, the thing is that, folks, there's a difference between cigarette, smoke, tobacco, and nicotine and the smoking ritual or the smoking habit. They're not the same. We want to separate the two and see cigarette smoke and tobacco and nicotine as something separate from this ritual. We're going to have them keep all the parts of the ritual. And so this is one of the ways I decouple these things. And when I do that, then they're starting to see that there truly is no benefit to cigarette, smoke, tobacco, and nicotine. Okay? There is no benefit to it at all. It causes the nervous system to increase the heart rate, increase the blood pressure. It does all kinds of things like that. So there is an art to reframing perceived benefits, but this is the key to changing a habit, is to get rid of the belief that there is a benefit. So there are 3 simple reframes that we're working with when you want to change a habit. Reframe number 1, habits are easy to break. There's a whole bunch of patter that I do in a program about how habits are easy to break. Now, raise your hand if you do not think habits are easy to break. Okay. Anyone think habits are not easy to break? Okay. Right. Haven't we all heard that if you do something 21 times in a row, it becomes a habit, right? Everyone's heard that, right? How many people here have had a car payment? Raise your hand if you ever had a car payment. Okay. Did you make more than 21 payments? Yes. Did you have any problems stopping making the payment when the payment was complete? Do you have any issues with that at all? No, of course not, right? How about going to school? Did anyone here go to school 5 days a week, right? Consistently for several months at a time? Did you have any problems on the first day of vacation not going to school? No problems at all, right? Why? Because there's no benefit to doing it. Now imagine, folks, let's extend that you are wrongfully imprisoned for 21 years, not 21 days, 21 years. And every day for 21 years, they wake you up at 5 a.m. to make license plates. That's surely long enough to establish a habit. Now you finally get exonerated. They let you out of jail. It's your first day of freedom. You may wake up at 5 a.m. out of habit, but is there any snowball's chance in hell that you're going to go make a license plate out back that first day of freedom? No way. Why? There's no benefit. But if I then roll up on your driveway and say, Anas, I know that you've been wrongfully, I know you've been in jail for the last 21 years. I know you're starting over. Guess what? I got 100,000 euros or $100,000 for you. All I need is you to make me one license plate. Are you motivated now to make it? Yes, you are. No problem. Why? There's a benefit. Okay? So the strength of a habit is directly proportional to the strength of the perceived benefit. And habits are easy to break, folks. They're incredibly easy to break. The only thing that makes you hold on to a habit is believing it's still working and believing there's still a benefit. Once you reframe that, it's very easy to stop. Okay, you've got lots of things that you've done habitually and ritualistically for years on end, and the minute it stopped working, you stopped doing it. I bet most of you, if you have jobs and if you're working, the minute your boss stopped paying you, you would have no problems not showing up at work anymore, right? Because now there's no benefit to continuing to do that. So keep that in mind. The second reframe is that the kingpin to a habit is believing there's a benefit. We want to list out the benefits, and then we want to start to reframe them one by one. And you can learn a lot in the basic free NLP course that we have on exactly how to start to reframe the way you think about those perceived benefits. You can also do Google searches as well and find information contrary to what you believe to be true. And step 3 is there is no benefit. There is no benefit. That's the last reframe. There's no benefit to the unwanted habit. There is a benefit to the smoking ritual, but there is no benefit to cigarette smoke and tobacco and nicotine when you put it into your body. It does nothing for you at all. There is no actual benefit to eating highly processed food and ingesting it in your body. Okay? It may feel good for a second, but the reality of it is that it's not actually working for you. If it was, you should do it and you should continue to do it. So this is how we change habits. Now, when it comes to goals, there are 4 powerful questions that you want to ask yourself. And this is what we call the NLP well-formed outcome. The first question you want to ask yourself is, what do you actually want? Okay? So if you want to exercise more, get clear on what specifically that looks like for you. So what do you want? Do you want to exercise more? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to stop smoking? Do you want to stop drinking? Do you want to sleep better? Do you want to be more disciplined? Get clear on what you want. Most people are very clear on what they don't want, but they haven't really thought about what they do want. And remember, we've got that reticular activating system. If you don't get clear on what you want, your mind has nothing to start to look for. It has nothing to start to form synapses for. It is nothing to start to build those neural pathways towards. So that's why it's so important for us to get clear about what we want. The next question is where, when, and with whom do you want it? When you create a goal for yourself, many people either don't think about what they want or they don't think about the context in which they want it. Where, when, and with whom do you want this? So who's got a goal that we can work with here? Who's got a goal, something that you want that you're willing to share with the group? Like, I want to exercise more. I know, was that Aromi that said that? Is she still on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what is your goal? If you don't mind me asking, what do you actually want?
I want to get back into exercise.
Okay. And can you say more about that? Like, what other goals do you have? What does getting back into exercise do for you?
Getting fit, losing weight.
Okay. So you want to be fit, you want to lose weight, and you believe one of the paths to do that is to exercise more.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Next question is where, when, and with whom do you want that? Where, when, and with whom do you want to be more fit?
Just by myself. It's all for myself, not for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but where? Do you want it all the time? At home, at work?
I want to be fit everywhere.
Huh?
When all the time and with whom? With everybody.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things that you would be doing if you were fit?
Uh, I'll probably go do a half a marathon again.
Okay. So there you go. You can make a picture of that. You would do a half marathon. What else would you do?
Um, just be more active.
Mm-hmm. You'd be more. So if you were more active, what kinds of things would you do? What would that look like?
Much more happier, I guess.
Okay,
Uh,
but what does more active look like? Are you going out dancing? Are you traveling more?
uh, Probably have an active lifestyle.
Okay, but
Generally, a more active lifestyle.
okay. So help us make a picture of active lifestyle for you. Should we
Oh,
see you, should we imagine you hiking up a mountain? Do we imagine you running through the city? Do you imagine you riding a bicycle through Amsterdam?
probably, probably maybe a more of a marathon kind of a training.
Okay, so we'd see you running a marathon. We have that. And what else? Give me one more thing we'd see you doing that we could go, oh, that's a Romy doing an active lifestyle.
I'll probably go kayaking more.
There we go. So we can make a picture of that. We can make a picture of you running a marathon. We can make a picture of you kayaking. Okay.
Mhm.
These are the kinds of things, folks, these are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself as you develop this picture of what you want in your mind and see yourself doing these different things. It allows your mind to start to build out the neural pathways towards that. Okay. The next one is, what is the evidence? How would you know you have it? What would the evidence be that you're more fit? Because more fit's very variable, it's very undefined. You know, if someone goes from 500 pounds to 300 pounds, they're more fit, but they would not necessarily be fit by someone else's standards. So what would
Uh,
you have to see or hear or feel to know that you are fit the way that you want to be?
I think uh, it's a sense of feeling for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'll feel more graceful running, graceful doing yoga, and of course, a lot lighter.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a weight in mind? You don't have to share it with us. Do you have a pant size in mind, for example?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good. Yeah. So get clear on these types of things.
Hmm.
Okay. So that would be some of the evidence. How would you know? Also, how would you know you're living that fit lifestyle? Would you be working out 2 times a week, 3 times a week? What would you be doing differently in terms of how you're eating? What would you be doing differently in terms of snacking? Like Julia might notice that she's now watching TV at night and just drinking tea instead of watching TV at night and eating snacks, things like that. What would the evidence be? Okay. And then to tap into a powerful why, folks, and a deeper sense of motivation, think about what would having that goal do for you. So, Romy, let's say that you were really fit, like completely fit in your ideal weight, shape, and size. You're
Hmm.
running half marathons, you're kayaking. What would having that and doing that make possible for you that's even more important?
Um, can you explain that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, let's say that you were fit. Let's say you reached your fitness goals.
Hmm.
You're now running half marathons. You're now kayaking when you want to. You mentioned this before. What does that make possible for you?
Just a sense of I can do it attitude, the feeling. It's a feeling.
One of the things, let me remind you, one of the things you mentioned before is you said, I think I'd be happier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy. What else? How else would it impact your life? Are you in a relationship?
I am.
How would that change?
Oh, I'll be an inspiration for my to my daughter.
Ah, so you'd be an inspiration for your daughter. Yep. How would that impact your relationship, though, like your romantic relationship?
Probably better sex.
Yeah, sex might be better, right? How would it maybe impact friends around you?
Yeah. My friends generally are quite active and healthy, so
Yeah.
would yeah.
So you might feel more connected with them.
Mhm.
These are other things. So get clear on what do you want, folks? Where, when, and with whom do you want it? This helps your mind build a clear picture. It's like giving your mind clear instructions, right? If I get in a cab and the cab driver says where to, and I go, I don't know, I don't want to go to Santa Cruz because they're all weird there. The cab driver doesn't know where to take me. They may go, okay, oh, that's fine, but where do you want to go? I don't know, maybe somewhere around San Francisco. Where are they going to take me? So I have to give them clear instructions. Okay.
Mhm.
Makes sense. Now, I want to talk about something here that is worth mentioning, and that is the neurological levels of change. The concept in NLP called the neurological levels of change. And one of the things that's unique about NLP is we work on multiple levels of the mind. So many of you who have been stuck trying to change behaviors and trying to change habits, and you don't know why you can't seem to do it, the problem lies at a deeper level, or what we call a higher neurological level. So there is, in the NLP practitioner, we go into this in great depth, but knowing the neurological levels and understanding it will streamline your communication. It will economize your goals because it makes it easier to target where to work. It eliminates wasted time and effort, and it helps you to diagnose problems and know where you need to target the work that you're going to do. It will also help you to build motivation. So I just want to briefly introduce you to these levels, and you can search me up on YouTube and find more detailed videos explaining this. But the first level is environment. And the environment is your body, it's where you spend your time, it's the people that you surround yourself with. It is literally the places that you put yourself in and the place that you're in, which is your body. And your environment impacts you in a huge way. If you have bowls of candy sitting around you and really comfy couches that beckon you every night after work and a million channels on your TV, you're much more likely to come home, sit on that couch, eat candy, and watch a movie. Does this make sense? Okay. If you have roommates who all like to order in food and eat food in front of the TV every night, you're much more likely to do that with them. But if you live in a place where the environment is set up and it's got exercise equipment and it doesn't have a comfortable couch and it doesn't have a TV out in the front room, and I'm not saying you need to be this extreme, but just realize if you have it set up where there's exercise equipment, stuff like that, do you think you're more likely to use it? Absolutely. If all of your friends that you hang out with and your partner you hang out with, they all exercise at night after work before they have dinner, do you think you're more likely to exercise? Absolutely. So the first thing to consider is your environment, and you want to set up your environment to win. I told you about the bars sitting in a basket on the counter and how they blew through them in 2 days. And when we put them up on the top shelf, it made it a lot better. So one thing you can do is set up your environment to make it really easy. If you fill your fridge full of highly processed foods, you're more likely to eat highly processed foods. If you have a problem with ice cream, one of the best things to do is just not have it in the house. Okay. If you know that when you start to eat certain foods, you eat them uncontrollably, don't buy them at Costco where you can get big bulk bags of them. Maybe get one little serving and bring that home so that you set up your environment to win. The next layer is your behavior. Your behavior is what you're actually doing. What are the actual things that you're doing or not doing? This is where most weight loss programs, for example, focus, or most motivation programs. They're like, oh, let me give you some different behaviors to do. And most people, at least my clients, find that advice totally annoying because every weight loss client I've ever worked with could name 3 things easily within 2 seconds that they could do that would improve their results and the quality of their life. That's not the problem. The problem is how to get themselves to do it consistently. And that's the big challenge. So, but behavior is something that we want to take a look at, and this is something that we measure. If you make a change in behavior, you change your environment. If I eat less and I move more, my physical body will change. If my house is dirty and I clean my house, behavior would be clean, my home gets clean, and my environment changes. So with each higher neurological level, if you make a change at that level, it changes everything beneath it. The next layer is skills and capabilities. Skills and capabilities are like clusters of behaviors. So if one behavior is washing lettuce and one behavior is cutting a tomato, we can put those two together into the skill and capability of making a salad. Okay? And so certain skills and capabilities like learning how to exercise efficiently, learning how to cook for yourself, learning how to find meals that are satisfying, these skills and capabilities can help you out tremendously when it comes to changing habits. If you develop the skill and capability of learning how to get your nervous system to calm down instead of reaching for a cigarette, that can also help you out quite a bit. But most of you who are struggling with habits and behaviors that you can't seem to change, it's going to be on this next level, and that is beliefs and values, what you believe. Think of a belief as, there's a couple ways to think about it. One is think of it as a story you tell yourself about what's possible for you in the future. Another way to think about a belief is it's a decision that you've made for yourself. And when you make this decision, so if I have the belief that losing weight is difficult, and I've made that decision, losing weight is difficult, now my reticular activating system is looking for all of the evidence that that's true. Now remember, I'm only paying attention to less than 10% of this huge reservoir of experience that's going on in my life that's around me. I'm paying attention to a tiny little bit of it. But if I make the decision that losing weight is difficult, my mind is now looking for all of the pieces of evidence that that's true. Well, there was that pie at Thanksgiving. I really had a hard time saying no to that. That was pretty difficult. And then, boy, I was really tired the other day when I came home. I said I was going to go to the gym and I didn't go. There's another example of it's difficult. Oh, and my friends all complain that, they can't get their holiday weight off. There's another example that's difficult. And my mind starts to curate these examples. And the more it stacks examples, the more it creates this thing called an attractor basin. So now whenever I think about weight loss, my mind tends to gutterball into this idea that it's difficult and it's painful. Why? Because I'm already primed to look for it. I have what's called a response expectancy that it's going to be difficult and it's going to be challenging. And this is how it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. My mind is tuned in to looking for all the ways in which it's difficult. And so if you have that going on, folks, one of the things you can start to do tonight is write down, if that limiting belief is it's going to be difficult to lose weight, do the complete opposite. What would the complete opposite of that be? It's easy to lose weight. And then start to gather evidence from that reservoir of experience that you already have, real experience that you have already had, of examples where it's easy to lose weight, or it's easy to eat less, or it's easy to exercise more, which would be a supportive habit to losing weight, where it's easy and enjoyable to run that half marathon, Aromi, or where it's easy and enjoyable to want to go out and do things like kayaking. And start to collect those. And it may seem difficult to do initially, but it's not. And in my experience, once you get 7 to 10 examples, that reticular activating system shifts. And now your mind is looking for more and more evidence. And it will keep doing that, whether you're aware of it or not, of evidence of how it's easy to do. And so when you are working on changing habit, you want to start by making a powerful decision. And I really encourage you to consider your beliefs and values, because if you don't believe that something's possible, you will miss all of the opportunities to actually fulfill that and execute on that. You won't even see it. Your mind will delete it. And if you think your mind does not delete things, think of the last time you bought a car. How many people notice this? Last time you bought a car, all of a sudden, you start seeing that car everywhere you go. Raise your hand if you've had that experience. You buy a car and pretty soon you start seeing it everywhere you go. And if you're like a lot of people, after a little while, you can even tell the difference between this year's model and last year's model. Why? You're tuned into it now. When I discovered my wife was pregnant with my first son, suddenly I started noticing pregnant women and children-related things everywhere I went. I saw minivans with a baby on board. I saw pregnant women walking down the street. I saw strollers. I saw Kids R Us. I saw playgrounds. I saw all these things kid-related because my mind was tuned into it and looking for that. And so realize, folks, if you believe that losing weight is difficult, it's because of 2 reasons. Number one, you've made that decision, so your mind is curating all the examples of how it's difficult. And because of that, your mind is deleting and completely overlooking the ways in which that it's easy. And so that creates friction towards your goal. Now, if you're looking for how do I find these limiting beliefs that are getting in the way of the goals that I have, what you want to do is step 1 is take a look at anywhere where you're not getting the results that you want. Real simple. Where am I not getting the results that I want? That's one place to look. The other place to look is where in my life do I not feel good? If I feel good and I'm in what we call an empowering state where I feel love, joy, curiosity, gratitude, openness, excitement, flow, things are great. You're just going to cruise along, no problem. But for those of you who have goals that you're not getting, or let's say you want to lose weight and you can't, or you want to quit smoking and you can't, take a look at where you're stuck. And I guarantee you, wherever you're stuck, there's a story. So if you go, oh, I want to stop smoking, but I can't, you have a story about why that is. Oh, it's going to be too hard to quit smoking. I'll gain a bunch of weight. I won't be able to relax. I won't get any time for myself. You'll have all these stories. And within those stories, you're going to find some limiting decisions that you've made, or what we call limiting beliefs. You take that belief and you flip it to the polar opposite, and you start to stack evidence that that new belief is true. When you do that and you get 7 to 10, it will neutralize. And the goal really isn't even to convince you that the new belief is true. But if you stack enough of those, it will help to convince you that the old belief cannot be true, because we can find evidence to support both the beliefs. This goes for relationships. It goes for your job. It goes for any one of your habits. Wherever you're experiencing frustration, you're not getting the results that you want, there is a limiting belief. And that limiting belief is causing you friction because it's getting your mind to look for all the reasons why you should pump the brakes, all the reasons why it's going to be difficult. And it just creates an attractor basin for that. That's how beliefs work. That's all they are, is they guide our attention to look for a certain kind of experience. And the more we do that, the more we have that same kind of experience. Why? Because we're looking for it. Okay? So you can start to do that right away, and that will help. And I encourage you to challenge those beliefs and values. If you get stuck, hop on one of the office hours with me, message me through the free group, and I will personally help you with that. Now, the next level of neurological change is identity. And identity is just a cluster of beliefs and values. Just like skills and capabilities are a cluster of behaviors, and identity is a cluster of beliefs and values. Have you ever met someone who suddenly became a born-again Christian? Raise your hand if you ever met someone like that. They went from like maybe agnostic one day to born-again Christian the next day, or someone suddenly became a mom, or they became a dad, or they became married, or what's another kind of transformation? They joined the military, for example. And the minute they stepped into that new identity, all of a sudden they adopted a whole new set of beliefs overnight. It's like a belief chiropractic adjustment. It's like all of a sudden they get a whole new set of beliefs. I remember when I realized I was going to become a dad, all of a sudden I'm walking around for probably about 6 months going, oh, I'm a dad now. I wonder how a dad would do this. I wonder how I need a new car. What kind of car does a dad buy? Certainly not going to get a two-seater anymore, right? How would a dad handle this situation? How would a dad handle that situation? Or some of you have done this with your professional career or your relationships. I'm in a relationship now. How would I handle this? How would I handle that? So identity is like a group of beliefs and values that we pick up all at once. And then the final field is this spiritual field, and that is something greater than ourselves and a power greater than ourselves. Now, that could be a group identity. So, for example, if you think about when 9/11 happened, suddenly a whole bunch of people that didn't feel connected felt connected. Now it was us Americans against the terrorists, right? And we kind of developed this group identity. Some of us have done this around the last election. You know, Republicans band together, Democrats band together, and that's kind of a group identity. How can we use this for change? How can we use this for overcoming habits? Well, guess what, folks? Where there is fear and where there is anxiety about your goals, if you can believe in something greater than yourself, and I'm not suggesting that you need to believe in God, but if you can believe in a power or an intelligence that is greater than you, that can be a source of faith. There are things that are greater than us that are out there. And if you can tap into having faith and believing in a higher intelligence, there is a whole field there that we can tap into to help us with our goals. Now, I talked about this last month when we talked about neuroscience and rewiring the brain. There's this whole concept called the observer effect. And for some reason, when they shoot electron particles through two slits and see how it lands on the back wall, what actually happens changes when it knows it's being observed. There is this observer effect that seems to happen. We also know that if I take two guitars and I pluck the A string, every guitar has 6 strings, but if I pluck the A string on one guitar, only the A string on the other guitar will vibrate. Okay? So if there's something that you want and you can kind of energetically dial into that in a way that feels congruent, right? So like now I pluck my own A string, I'm going to resonate the A string in the experiences and the people and the circumstances around me. And then I will sync up with that and we will resonate together. And that alone is a power greater than myself. Okay. If you have a hard time believing in a power greater than yourself, think about the last meal that you ate. Okay. If you think about the food on your plate and you think about where that food came from, there is a grocery store that curated and found a way to logistically bring that food in. There's trucks and airplanes that flew that food in. There's farmers behind those airplanes that grew that food, and they've been growing that food for generations. There's other people that had to mine the food and bring the food to you. There's a whole bunch of things that are beyond us and greater than us that contribute to our daily experience each and every day. And so there is a bigger power that is greater than us that is out there. And there is something about this energetics. If you start to study quantum physics, I won't go too into it. I won't go too woo-woo with you. But what I'll tell you is this, is that any area of your life where you have a goal that you're not cruising towards smoothly, I promise you, you're conflicted. And so the old approach was you must hustle and grind and break through and overcome your challenges and have a breakthrough. And that's how you're going to get your goal. The new approach to this is if there's a goal that you want that's out in front of you, what you want to do is identify what is the resistance to having the goal. So if you think about reaching your goal weight, what are my fears, worries, and concerns about doing that? Data dump that story out in your journal. Identify those limiting beliefs, flip them around, and stack the evidence that the opposite is true. On top of that, take the free NLP course, because with NLP, you learn to do more than what traditional psychology does. Traditional psychology takes the stories we have about our experience and helps us think about those stories differently, either by giving additional perspective or by reframing the story themselves. And that's great. That will help you change what you think is a benefit into seeing it as maybe not a benefit. So if you want to remove some of the benefits, if you want to change the way you think about them, traditional psychology can help you do that. That's great. So can NLP practitioner. But NLP also takes a look at how you store these thoughts and images in your mind. And realize from an NLP point of view, we're not responding to reality. We're responding to a little bit of data that we take from reality and we put in a collage in our mind. And how we feel when we look at that collage and the meaning and story we make about that collage is what determines how we feel and how we act. So it's really not what's happening. It's more about the meaning we make about this experience. And so if you learn basic NLP, which again, you can get right in the free course, you learn that you can move pictures around in your mind and it changes how you feel about things. That's pretty huge. You also learn how to start to reframe some of these things and think about them differently. Okay, so I encourage you all to do that. And, if you want to develop a new habit, take the same cue that you had before, develop a new routine and a new reward. And I'll just give you one quick example of doing this. So one of the habits that I do in a weight loss program is called water before snack. It's really simple. So what I'll do is everyone's got a snack cupboard. Let's be honest. We all have snack cupboards, probably have one at work. If you eat a lot at work, you've got a snack drawer, right? But we have a snack cupboard and we call it the wall of water. And so what we do is in that cupboard where the snacks are, we get a couple water bottles and we create a wall of water that you physically have to go through to get the snacks. And you can still have as many snacks as you want. But now what's going to happen is whenever you go to reach for a snack, you're going to have to go through the water. That is the cue that then reminds you of the suggestion that we do in hypnosis, which is any time in the future when in the past you would have reached for a snack, now you're going to reach for a glass of water. You're going to drink that water, wait 10 minutes, and then see how you feel. Now, you don't need to do a formal hypnosis session to do that. You can just simply tell yourself that. Anytime in the future when I want to reach for a snack. So Julia, if you're watching TV later on tonight and all of a sudden you go, man, I really want a snack. Sure, I can have one. But before I do that, I'm going to reach for that water. I'm going to drink that water. I'm going to wait 10 minutes and then see how I feel. Now, will you do it every time? Probably not, but it'll get you to think about it every single time. Because a lot of times we snack mindlessly and we do this. And what's the way to guarantee you're going to do that suggestion? Put that wall of water up there. It will make you think about it every single time. And guess what, folks? Did you know that the average snack is about 250 calories? And did you know that if you reduce your eating by one snack a day, by 250 calories a day, that'll be worth about 25 pounds in a year. For every 100 calories that you add or subtract on a daily basis, that's worth about 10 pounds of weight in a year's time. So in a good weight loss program, an effective weight loss program, what we do is we stack habits. We just create one little habit, one little change. So if I use water before snack with a client, I'm trying to get them to eat one less snack a day. Does that feel doable? That doesn't feel too hard, right? One less snack a day. If you still want to have it, just one less a day, because we eat mindlessly all the time. One less a day consistently, 25 pounds in a year. So if you want to lose 50 pounds, we might stack 2 habits. If you want to lose 75, we might stack 3 habits. It's not super complicated if you think about it in the right way, but you'll never consider that stuff if you believe that losing weight is hard and difficult. You won't see the ways in which it's actually incredibly easy. And realize this, folks, if you believe it's easy to gain weight, how many people believe it's easy to gain weight? Okay, yeah, if you believe it's easy to gain weight, then it has to also be easy to lose weight. If it was easy to put it on without noticing, it has to be true that it's easy to then take it off without noticing. Because the little change was really easy to make that put the weight on, which means the little change will be easy to make that will start to get the weight off. Okay? Align your thoughts with your goals. So the questions you ask at each one of these levels are right here. With environment, we're asking where, when, and with whom, which was in those 4 powerful questions. With behavior, we're asking what specifically. What specific behaviors? I'm now going to reach for water before I have a snack and try to wait 10 minutes. That's the behavior I'm going to work on. What's the skill and capability, right? How specifically am I going to do something? What specific skills or capabilities do I want to develop? Maybe I'll learn how to work out. Maybe I'll learn how to cook healthier meals. Maybe I'll learn some other tools and techniques. I'll take the free NLP course. Beliefs and values, why? This elicits a powerful why, which can often be a deep source of motivation. Identity asks the question for whom and what does it mean? And then for whom else and for what else would be the spiritual beyond us. All stress, pressure, and anxiety exists when we are focused on ourselves. One of the best ways to get out of it is to focus on somebody else and something greater than yourself. And one thing we didn't really get a chance to talk about too much tonight is this idea of your personality profile. You can see this in my first masterclass called How to Read and Lead masterclass. It is on YouTube. And I talk about these personal needs of freedom, security, being smart, belonging, or self-expression. These personal needs, folks, dramatically affect what gives you a green light and what gives you a red light. You want to know what your number 1 and number 2 personal needs are so you know how to motivate yourself and you know what will cause stress. You know what makes your nervous system open and what makes your nervous system clench up. If I'm a freedom guy, then I love options, adventure, and upside potential. That always gets me to go yes and feel motivated and want to take action. And what always makes me contract and go sympathetic and go into a primal state is feeling restricted, limited, or controlled. And so there's 5 different categories. We talk about it in that How to Read and Lead masterclass. So you might want to reference that as well when you're working on motivating yourself. Okay? So I'm going to pause there. If you have any questions, I'll take questions for about 9 minutes, and then I'm going to close out the meeting. So thank you for being here. Any questions about anything that we've covered? Let's see here. Let me look in the chat.
Robert, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what do you do, like in that neurological, the chart that you showed me, environment is a big factor, correct? What do you do if you live with your family and your kids are like, not like they make a big mess in your home and you want to make things clean, and how do you change that? How do you change their behavior? It's not just you who can control that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would start with small little steps, but if you're the parent and they're the child, then perhaps it's time to get the children to start doing some chores. But I will tell you this, it's really hard to get your children to do something that you're not willing to do first. Most parents who kids snack uncontrollably are uncontrollable snackers themselves. And then what happens is they feel guilty trying to impose that rule on their children. So if you keep the house clean, for example, and then your kids leave a dish out, and you can start to train them to clean up after themselves. Okay. I want to answer this question real quick about, it said, Quinn asked about, how do you break the habit of social media scrolling or mindless video watching? Okay. Now, you're not going to like my answer, but the easiest way to break it is to take the apps off your phone. Maybe you still have them on the computer, maybe you still have them on your iPad, but if you take them off your phone, that right there is going to reduce your usage by 50% easily. The other way is make your screen black and white, like I showed you earlier. You can You can do that alteration. But again, adjust your environment. Adjust your environment. If you want to watch less TV, folks, and you've got a TV in your bedroom, get the TV out of your bedroom. If you want to get to bed earlier at night, it's the easiest way to do it is just to start to adjust your environment. And if you're not willing to do that, then make some other adjustments. I know some parents, it's kind of extreme. They have their internet router on a timer, and the timer, it shuts the internet off every night at a certain time. That's not something I'm willing to do, but that would definitely work to do that. You could, some people, what they do is they have a cover that they put over their television that also reduces it. Just start to play with your environment and notice what little moves. Now, here's the trick is you want to make moves that you're willing to do and that you can live with. So if you feel like you're willing to take Instagram and Facebook off your phone, I guarantee you're going to scroll less when you do that. Why? You won't have it on there, right? You can put some brainy app on there instead and have something else instead. And your mind will naturally gutter ball and do that instead. So that's the easiest way. If you want to like not eat junk food, don't have junk food in the house. If you do get it, get one, single size servings. And it's just a really easy way to start to cut down. That's not too hard. Focus on asking yourself, what are some little changes, some little adjustments that I can make, that I'm willing to make, and focus on doing them consistently. One example is I used to have this habit where my admin would run up to Starbucks and get us grande soy no foam lattes. And I would have like one or two a day. And I remembered I wanted to lose weight. And at the time too, I was drinking wine. I don't drink anymore, but at the time I was drinking wine and I didn't want to give up the wine, but I was willing to make some adjustments with the coffee. Well, guess what? That grande soy no foam latte was 176 calories. That meant it was a 17.5-pound habit to have one of those a day. And so I started thinking, am I willing to wear 17.5 pounds of extra fat on my body to have one soy latte a day, or am I willing to exchange that for black coffee? And it took about 4 days of drinking black coffee to prefer it. I now prefer black coffee. It takes no effort at all. Now, on top of that, we can also adjust that collage in your mind. And if I'm doing coaching with somebody, I can help you quickly adjust the collage in your mind. So if there's some food you really like and you're having a hard time saying no, we can play with that collage so that it changes how you feel about it. Probably some of you have had the experience of, many people have had this, like with alcohol, for example, where they love it for a while and then all of a sudden they have a bad experience and they never touch it again. I know people that have had that experience with shrimp. I had one friend who ate a bad shrimp cocktail one night and never touched it again. No effort, no motivation required. When he thinks about shrimp, his stomach turns. Very easy. For me, it was Southern Comfort. Some friends and I got a hold of a bottle of Southern Comfort in high school. We drank the whole thing. I've never been that sick in my life. I've never touched it since. No effort, no problem. Takes no motivation at all. I think about it and my stomach turns. And it's very easy. So we can change associations, folks. And that's the beautiful thing about NLP. Because we realize we're not responding to reality, but our own internal made up representation of reality. Julia, question.
Yeah, it's regarding the pyramid. I had a couple of aha moments. I'm just curious, like when I stopped eating meat and went completely plant-based, it feels like it was just a momentary shift, which I'm sure took time to get to that moment. With the pyramid, do you feel like it goes up and down, that something can start spiritually and kind of trickle down into the environment, or does it begin from the environment and then go to beliefs and kind of trickle its way up? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the idea with the neurological levels is whenever you make a change at a higher level, it will automatically change everything beneath it. And so usually when you want to initiate a change,
so it's this way. Okay.
You start at a higher level and then it drops down. And that's the way it most effectively and reliably works. So absolutely, people have, one of the ways I've helped some people get off of really serious drug addictions is help them find a spiritual connection with something greater than themselves, or help them get involved in a spiritual group where they have an identity level shift and instantly all the beliefs and values change And then the behaviors change underneath that. And then even their environment changes.
Okay, and on that note, very quickly, what if I also just realize that the issue that I have, let's say, with making more money has a spiritual component, about that contradiction between kind of going the spiritual route versus kind of materialism, making a lot of money. So the issue itself, let's say, is tied into a duality all the way on top. Is there a way to kind of
Well, that sounds like a belief.
oh, it's more like a belief.
Well, it
Okay.
sounds like a belief, and it sounds like you've got the belief that, you know, I can either, like it's an either or thing. I can either be spiritual or I can make money. And that's a great way to keep yourself broke.
Hmm.
And I think that's a totally incongruent belief. I would encourage you to take care of that one and figure out what that is. Do the data dump. Do the data dump of, oh, well, if I make a lot of money, that must mean I'm unethical, or that must mean I'm not spiritual, or that must mean I'm not a good person. Do that data dump, find out what that limiting belief is in there, and then flip it and look for the evidence that that's true. The reality of it is that, you know, if you want to be spiritual and help other people, the more well-funded you are, the easier that's going to be. Is it not?
Logically, you realize this, yes, but
Yeah.
yeah. No, I
Yeah.
got it. Okay, so I thought
That's a
it was
perfect example
higher.
of limiting beliefs. Those are
Yeah,
those kind of limiting beliefs, folks, that create friction and keep us stuck, that are not useful.
yeah,
They're not useful. And those, most of those beliefs we picked up, realize most of our beliefs we got between the ages of 3 and 13, or 3 and 7, depending on which neuroscientist you're interviewing.
yeah.
Bruce Lipton would say about 7 is when we pack them all up. I don't know about you. I was not qualified to make major life decisions at 6 years old and 7 years old. I
Yeah.
had a pretty warped perception of reality. I only knew the world through my parents' eyes at that time. But that's where a lot of our beliefs get formed,
No.
you know? And maybe your parents had financial struggles and they said, oh, those rich people, you know, are, you know, immoral or something like that. And your brain goes, okay, cool. If you have a lot of money, that means you're a bad person. And so now you stay broke for the rest of your life because of that. Or you financially struggle when you don't need to. These are the kind of limiting beliefs. You got to realize we will rise to the level of our beliefs. Whatever we believe is true, it opens, when we believe something's true, it opens the gateway to it. And when we believe something's not true, we won't even allow ourselves to try it. So we will miss opportunities. We will miss coincidences. We will miss synchronicities. We will
Yeah.
prevent ourselves from developing skills and capabilities. If I believe I'm not a math person, I will not get better at math because I'll never develop that skill and capability. I won't even try. And then I'll be right.
Hmm.
Whoop-de-doo. Okay. So now I got to pay an accountant a bunch of money and I got to be stressed about it because I don't know numbers. When in reality, I could have just learned it and gotten a little bit better at it. Okay. So I'm going to leave you all with this. Ask yourself the question. So if what you're struggling with is finances, you know, and it's like, and it always has felt like money has been hard to make, just as you go to bed tonight, consider, what if the complete opposite is true, that money's actually incredibly easy to make? How would I go about my life differently? How would tomorrow be different? What would I notice that maybe I wasn't noticing before? If you believe that, like, you know, being disciplined is difficult, what if being disciplined is incredibly easy? Okay. Someone mentioned procrastination and social media earlier. We could say, I bet you've been very disciplined about looking at social media throughout the day. You've been incredibly dedicated to looking at social media for hours on end a day, even when it seemed like you didn't have the time to do it. You always make time for it, right? So what if it's incredibly easy to be disciplined in the areas that you want? And I think what you'll find is when you start to align with that, especially if you look for real evidence in your life that that's already true, suddenly you'll start to see opportunities. You'll see examples of where that's happening, and your reticular activating system will start to notice that. And that's what you want to do, is align your reticular activating system with the goals and results that you want, folks. That will reduce friction. That will increase momentum. Okay? So very nice to meet you all. Sorry I didn't get a chance to talk to each one of you individually. I hope to see you all again at next month's masterclass. And feel free to reach out through the chat. You can email me, robert@nlpca.com. You can go into the free course and you can talk in the group. You can also privately message me there. And I would love to meet you all and talk with you more. All right? Take
Thank you
care.